Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Financially, and I was working two jobs, she was working her job, and then a period of time came, another 18 months after that, she got pregnant with our second child, my son Oliver, my first son. And she's like, this is it. Like, I got to quit working. I can't let my kids be raised by somebody else. I said, okay, that's cool. We'll figure it out. So we got to get rid of things. We got to get rid of cars. We got to do things that, so I can afford it. I got to work more.
Yeah.
So she did. She quit her job. And at the time I had bought her a Prius because she was driving to La Jolla every day. She worked at Nordstrom's. Mm-hmm. And it was just, we were in over our head. And I remember the financial struggle was getting so heavy and it was such a burden. Like, I ended up showing up to Toyota where we bought her Prius. I asked them to just take the car. They're like, we can't. We're only going to give you less than you. We're going to give you $4,000 under the value. I called my cousin that day and I said, can I borrow $4,000? And he drove down and gave me $4,000. I gave $4,000 to Toyota and gave him the car because I need to get rid of that monthly payment of $500.
Yeah.
And then in order to pay him back, I ended up selling my truck at the time, paid him back. And then I bought this piece of shit F100, 1955 F100. And I thought, okay, this would be a cool project truck for me and my kids to work on later down the road, And I just thought, okay, I got ahead. Now I eliminated a few $100 worth of payments, and actually several $100 worth of payments. And now I can just work and catch up doing that with detail a little bit more.
Gotcha.
And so I was on my way to work one morning in that 55, 2 days after I bought it, and the freaking transmission blew. Drive shaft beat the whole undercarriage of the truck, the rear end. And at that point, dude, I had just borrowed from Peter to pay Paul and bought that truck. And my dad told me not to do it, and I just did it anyways, but I was a know-it-all. And I had to call my buddy at 4:30 in the morning. I had to call
If you needed an answer, all you had to do was ask me back then.
So I called my buddy at 4:30 in the morning. I could always count on him. He's a young kid. He's a trucker, and those guys just don't sleep. And I'm like, hey, I'm stuck on the side of the freeway. I need you to come pick me up, tow my truck off the freeway. So we towed it off the freeway. I went to work that day, came home from work, grabbed my wife's car, went to the junkyard, grabbed the transmission, grabbed the drive shaft, grabbed some rear end stuff, went to my buddy's house at like 7 o'clock that night. He builds race trucks. Mm-hmm. And I spent all night and till like 2 in the morning putting the transmission and drive shaft back into my truck so I could drive it back to work the next day. So instead of driving to work, I parked in the driveway, took my wife's car to work, sold the truck, and then I bought another piece of shit. Now help me buy. So eventually, with all that crazy getting through that struggle, my wife then now got pregnant with our third child, Forrest. And so we were just like drowning. And at that time, I found my faith in God. I pulled over on the side of the road at one point. And I remember where I was crying in my truck, and I was like, I can't do this by myself. Like, there's no way I can do this by myself. There's no human that can just bear this type of stress. And I felt at that time the Holy Spirit, and I just ever since was convicted and committed, and I never looked back. So my strength today comes from God and my relationship with Him, and then my belief and my faith that He'll just get you through anything. That wasn't me the whole time. I was getting by, but living through the stress of it was going to kill me sooner than later. And so now when I get into these situations, I'm calm, cool, and relaxed because I know, there's going to be but there's okay on the other side.
There's an answer.
Turnout, there's sun, the light's going to come through.
Yeah.
There's an answer for it, and that comes from that moment I pulled up on the side of the road and was convicted by God.
Yeah.
And so I've never left my faith since. So back
So
to
how old were you when that happened?
25.
Okay.
So it's just a little bit before all that mess.
So a bit of a turning point in your life.
It was a turning point, but it taught me and my wife, like I started reading the Bible then, but it taught me and my wife, as we were experiencing those hard times, like I'm gonna tell you, they were hard. Like we had each other and we had God. Like we were like, we're gonna lose this house. And we were young kids. Like I already knew I was working so freaking hard at the time. Like I was barely spending time with them. And then when I come home, I would just drink because I was stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
And so tables turned and I started knowing how to deal with that stress a little bit better. So I'm going back to fast forward. My third son, my wife's pregnant with him. And we were just like, we were fed up with being so financially stressed. I told my wife, I was like, so I just got licensed into real estate. Okay. And I hadn't done anything with it, but I was excited about it. And I told my wife, I was like, we're going to leave here, and on our way to the hospital, she's having contractions. I'm going to drive you by this property. And when we get out of the hospital, I'm going to sell our house and buy this property. We're going to move into this shit hole. I'm going to turn it into a house. Mm-hmm. So I drive her by this property, dirt road. She's bouncing around, having contractions, crying. She's like, just take me to the hospital. I'm like, we're moving into this barn. It was literally a 2-horse stable barn with a breezeway on it.
And I just wanted you to see it so that you know where we're going to be.
Yeah, she was crying. She's like, "There's no way we're doing this." It was full of trash. It's literally a barn. We watched way too much HGTV.
One of those conversations where she says, "You want to bring my baby? You want me to bring my babies here?
Yeah.
You want to put my babies in here?"
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Best decision, but honestly, one of the craziest sacrifices we've ever made. So I get her to the hospital. You know, everything goes good, healthy baby, come home. I draw up on this napkin when she's recovering, the barn, what I was gonna do. It was full of trash. I drove my dad there, and my dad shakes his head at me and gives me one of those moments. He's like, "Don't do it." Right. He's like, "Don't do it. I'm telling you now, don't do it." Yeah. I'm like, 2 weeks later, my house hits the market.
Right. It's like the truck thing.
Yeah.
Right. This seems to be a recurring theme with you and your dad. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah. So I list the house, and my first real estate transaction was actually the sale of my personal home. Wow. So then my second real estate transaction was the purchase of this property. Yeah. And I just, because I could work hard, and I thought, I'm going to tear this house apart. It's going to cost me $30,000. And I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about real estate. I just knew it all. At the time, so I was a young,
bulletproof, right? The whole thing, right?
Yeah. Egotistical, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. But I always had that mentality. Oh, I can do it. Yeah. There's no way you can tell me no. I'm just going to do it. Right. So we buy it, and then we're like, we don't have a house to live in now because this barn has to turn into a house. Now, where are we going to go? Yeah, where are we going to live? My grandma, we thought we were going to move in with my grandma, and that wasn't going to work out. So last second, we asked her brother to move in with him. And at this point, we had 3 kids. Wow. So we moved in with her brother.
Brand new one.
Yeah, right. Saving grace. Right. You know. Oh gosh. And so I just look back and I cringe. I feel bad for my brother-in-law. He saved my life for what he did, but in return, I hope I gave him back everything that he deserved for letting me do that. So while I was working on this barn, I had 2 jobs. I was doing the work at the house. Me and my dad did all the labor work. We lifted the barn up off the ground with beams. We broke out all the old footing. We set it back down. We rolled the house in position where it needed to be. And then we hired people to help us add on. We did all the plumbing, all the septic. And I would get off work. I would work late there. And then I'd go home. And on the weekends, I'd work at my brother-in-law's because he didn't charge me rent. Mm-hmm. I couldn't afford rent if he did. Right. Like I just couldn't. We were just trying to do this, and we were there. So I would do projects at his house. You know, while I was there, I painted his house on the outside. I painted on the inside. I built him a backyard patio. I built him a retaining wall. I put sprinkler systems in. I put pavers around the exterior. I graded out a couple paths, put in horseshoe pits, helped with chicken coops, replaced sump pumps, put can lights in the kitchen. And this all in a period of 8 months. months while I was building this barn.
So this sounds like an HGTV episode.
It should have been. Somebody would have gone on there and probably hired me a favor.
you who says
yeah.
or proclaims that you watched too much HGTV and it got you in trouble in the barn, right?
Well, we did it. I worked through it. So
you were probably the best house guest ever.
Yeah, I worked. I liked to work. It was good.
Cool,
so
you mind if I interrupt you for just a second?
Yeah.
So let's go back just a second. What made you get your real estate license?
I wanted out of construction. I knew that early. Like I saw my dad break his back, and I just felt bad for him.
Yeah.
And I just was like, I don't.
You didn't want to go down that same road.
I didn't want to. I admired my dad and I respected him, and I wanted to be like him, but I didn't want to do what he did.
Right.
I just didn't. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like to see him. So stressed out. And I just was like, and my real estate agent that helped me buy this house, she's like, you'd be really good at real estate. I'm like, really? You think so? You know how realtors recruit?
Yeah.
You'd be really good, that's, and she sold it on me. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna get licensed. Yeah. So I got licensed, and I told my dad, I was like, this is gonna come. There's gonna be a day that I quit working for you, and I'm gonna go do real estate. And he was like, okay, well, yeah, we'll see what happens. Thinking I was just gonna keep following path, Got licensed, had it for like 5 months, still working construction. And then my dad went for a trip. He was starting to become a gunsmith at the time. And he went for a trip in Georgia, and he left the job for a week. And I thought, like, this is probably a good time for me to do what I got to do while he's doing what he's got to do. And I left and started real estate full time. So when I started real estate full time, I knew financially I was back on my own. I had no paycheck. I was on salary. And so it was a huge, huge career move, scariest thing ever.
Yeah.
And
3 babies at home.
Yeah, I was told I was never going to make it. You know what I mean? And everybody thinks they're going to get in this industry to make $1 million, and I just wanted to make $1. I didn't care how much it was. I just needed to make $1
without breaking your back.
Yeah. Well, I still had to do it. This industry is a lot harder than people think.
Yeah.
I can tell you firsthand, I've done a lot of stuff, to do this to the level like you and I have, making it a business and not being an employee of it. It's hard work and it's stressful. Yeah. So at that time when my dad left town, I was like, Dad, I'm leaving. This is our way out. You're going to help me flip houses, and we're going to do our thing, and you can leave construction. We'll run a totally different type of crew. And he's like, okay, I think I broke his heart a little bit. But the struggle was real. I quickly realized I don't have work here. This is unemployment essentially. And I had detailing relying on, feeding my whole family. And at that point, I kind of let a little bit of the business wither away because I was so heavily involved in the construction work. So I had to rebuild detailing. I got offered a job at a church from a new friend of mine at the time who was a pastor. He's like, hey, for $1,000 a month, you come a couple days a week, I'll pay you to be our facilities director. I'm like, yeah, I'll take anything.
Okay. Yeah, why not?
I'll do it. So I worked at a church at the time. I was working real estate, and then I would pick up side gigs, working on houses, whether it was grading pads or painting houses or building decks. I would just take on work. So I had 4 jobs at the time when I started real estate to try and
to support your real estate habit. That's what we call it.
Yeah.
You're working to support your real estate habit.
Yeah. Yeah. So my first year, the stress is
over. I'm telling you, man.
My first year,
I'm getting stressed just listening to you.
So technically, my first year, I didn't start until I started selling real estate. Yeah. Because I was licensed in April. I didn't start until November. But from the time November when I sold my house, I told my dad, I was like, I'm going to sell 16 houses this year, which should have at the time probably earned me $100,000, and which was more money than I was making at the time.
Or dreaming of.
Yeah, dreaming of. And my dad's like, you're not going to sell 16 houses. He was more of a realist. He would put me in check, but I was more of a bull. I would fight back. And I ended up in that rolling year selling 10 houses, which I was super proud of because it was all referral, word of mouth. When I was detailing cars, I'd keep my real estate cards on me and I would give them that. I'm like, this is what I do full time, but I do this to fill in the gaps.
Right.
And so that kind of helped me with exposure. And Yeah. So real estate has been, that was how that happened.
So a friend of mine literally called me the other day and told me his car detailed. And the guy that detailed his car gave him a card and said, "This is what I do part-time. But this is my full-time job." He's a real estate agent. That just happened like 2 weeks ago.
I should find that guy.
That's a crack up, man.
Yeah.
So, pardon me. So you sell 10 houses your first year.
Yeah.
And now you're basically off and running, right? How'd you do your second year?
I did 15 houses my second year, I think, from what I remember.
How did it feel to be selling real estate and having an income, having something that you're not working your way towards breaking your back kind of thing? How did that feel?
Scary. Yeah, dude, it was scary.
It is scary.
Yeah, because I would go 3-4 months without a paycheck, and that's normal in this business.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you get like 5 deals that pop in your lap at once, which is a great payday when they all close within 2 months. But,
sure.
You know.
Then you go 3 months and you've got 5 mouths to feed.
Yeah, and you don't have any money.
Yeah.
You'd already spent the money you made because you're counting on it. And that was like an issue that I had in the beginning. It's like, how am I ever going to get ahead? I spend the money that's coming in because I needed it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so 10 my first year, 15 my second. I think I did 22 my third. I did
good job.
30 my fourth, 40, 50, 60, whatever, up to where I am today.
Right. And you've been in real estate now how long?
It's been 8 years, almost 9 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, almost 9 years.
So where did you start in real estate? What company were you in?
I started at Berkshire Hathaway.
Okay.
And I worked and was mentored by Sandra Brown.
Okay.
And at the time, Sandra Brown was like a very well-known real estate agent in East San Diego, which is where I was from. She was very well connected. People knew her. So I tried to utilize her name. But she kind of got lost in 2018 when the market crashed.
Right.
And she quit marketing herself because she didn't have the money to do it. So her name was kind of lost and just diminished. So I was starting fresh, and I realized that I loved Berkshire Hathaway at the time because it was a great source of camaraderie. I had a lot of agents in there that I fed off of and just kind of commingled with, that I wasn't a part of their team. But I asked so many questions in this industry. I was never afraid to pick up my phone and ask an agent that I didn't know if I could take him to lunch and pick his brain on how they did things.
Right.
And that's how I grew. Really.
Somebody called me the other day and asked me if they could take me to lunch and pick my brain.
Yeah.
And I told them it won't take long.
Yeah.
It's slim pickings.
Yeah. Well, I'll always say.
But I absolutely, I spent an hour and a half just,
yeah,
answering every question they had. But that I believe is a big, big deal. Paying it forward. Okay. I look at my life and my career, and there are a lot of people. I was sharing that with your ops manager. There are a lot of people that have come into my life and come through my life and passed, crossed paths with me and that kind of thing, that really, honestly, it's a God thing, because there's no way I could have written that script. If you look back, there's no way. And to this day, anybody ever asks me for, a mentor lunch or breakfast or whatever, or needs advice or what, I'm there. And I'm there because a lot of these guys that aren't with us anymore, a bunch of them have passed away, took the time that they didn't have to take to help somebody like me that was brand new in this business, didn't know what I was doing it wrong. They pulled me aside and said, look, you're doing this the wrong way. You need to do this. You need to look at this. You need to talk to this person, right? And that's a big deal, man. Paying it forward is a big deal. And it's our responsibility. When we succeed at this, it's our responsibility to then pay it forward. And that's a big part of this podcast, is teaching people about paying it forward, right? So a lot of the Mic Time episodes and things that people will hear on our podcast are lessons. They're experiences that I've had where somebody pulled me aside. I thought I was in trouble, right? And they pulled me aside, and it turned out I wasn't in trouble, but they literally set me in the right course. You mentioned earlier before we got started that, all people have to do is kind of point you in the right direction, and you just go. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.